When one of the most famous men on the planet walked into a small grocery store in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, nobody looked up. That was the point. It was a Tuesday afternoon, March 14th, 2023, just after 3 p.m. The kind of quiet, slow afternoon where the only sound inside Del Rey's corner market on Florida Boulevard was the hum of the refrigerator units and the faint crackle of a radio playing somewhere in the back. Shaquille O'Neal, 7 feet 1 inch tall, 325 pounds, hands the size of dinner plates, walked through the glass door in a gray hoodie, dark sweatpants, and white sneakers that looked like small boats on the linoleum floor. No entourage, no cameras, no security. Just a man who needed a bottle of water and a few things for the road. He ducked slightly under the door frame out of habit. He always ducked, even when he did not need to. He grabbed a basket and moved down the first aisle. Nobody turned around. Nobody whispered. This was not Beverly Hills. This was a corner store on Florida Boulevard, and the man behind the counter, Darnell Thibodeau, 58 years old, was reading a newspaper and had not looked up in 20 minutes. That is when he heard it. A soft, high beeping sound. 3 times. Then silence. Then a voice. "Ma'am, it's declined again." Shaq stopped walking. 2 registers over, a woman stood at the checkout counter. Her name was Delphine Arsenault, 71 years old. She wore a lavender blouse with small pearl buttons, a cream-colored cardigan, and orthopedic shoes that had seen 1,000 errands. Her white hair was pinned neatly at the back of her head. She held a small brown leather purse with both hands, pressed tight against her stomach. On the conveyor belt in front of her sat a loaf of bread, a carton of eggs, a can of red kidney beans, a small container of butter, and a single bunch of bananas, $41.17. "I don't understand," Delphine said quietly. "I have money in there. I checked this morning." The cashier, a young man named Brandon, glanced at the line forming behind her. 2 people, then 3. "Ma'am, it's just not going through. You want me to try one more time?" "Please," Delphine said. Brandon swiped. 3 beeps. Declined. Delphine's fingers tightened on the purse. The man behind her in line exhaled loud enough for everyone to hear. He looked at his watch. Shaq did not move. He stood at the end of the aisle and watched. Delphine opened her purse. She counted out bills, slowly. She had $14 in cash. She looked at the groceries on the belt. She looked back at her cash. Then she looked at Brandon. "Can you take off the butter?" she said softly. "And the beans." Brandon reached for the items. "Leave them," Shaq said. His voice came from somewhere behind the line, deep, quiet, like a single note on a bass guitar. Everyone turned. Shaq set his basket down and walked to the register. He was so wide in the aisle that the man behind her stepped back without even thinking about it. Shaq reached into the front pocket of his hoodie. He pulled out a card. "Ring it all up," Shaq said. "Everything on the belt." Brandon blinked. "Sir, are you sure?" "Yes." Delphine turned around. She had to look up. "A long way up?" "Oh, no," she said immediately. "No, no! I cannot let you do that." "You're not letting me do anything," Shaq said, and he smiled just a little. "I'm doing it." Delphine pressed her hand to her chest. Her eyes were wet. "Young man, I don't even know you." "You don't have to know me," Shaq said. "You just have to let me pay for your groceries." The card went through. 1 beep. Brandon bagged everything carefully. Shaq paid for his Gatorade, too. He handed Delphine her bags. "Thank you," she said. Her voice had dropped to almost nothing. "God bless you." "He already has," Shaq said. "You have a good evening, ma'am." And that should have been the end of it. A quiet moment in a quiet store on a Tuesday afternoon. A big man paying $41 for a woman he had never met. But there was something Shaq did not know. Something nobody in that store knew. Something that, when it came out 3 days later, made people stop what they were doing and sit down. To understand it, you have to go back. You have to go back past the championships, past the Hall of Fame, past the business empire and the television shows and the doctorate degree. You have to go back past all of it. You have to go back to the summer of 2001 to a parking lot outside the Staples Center in Los Angeles and a moment that Shaquille O'Neal has never spoken about publicly. Not once. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal was born on March 6, 1972 in Newark, New Jersey. He came into this world already too big for it. His mother, Lucille O'Neal, raised him mostly on her own in the Central Ward of Newark, one of the toughest neighborhoods in America. There were nights the heat did not work. There were weeks when dinner was whatever could be stretched furthest. There were mornings when Lucille stood in the kitchen before her children woke up and looked at what was in the cabinets and did the math quietly so no one else had to. But Lucille had a saying. She said it to young Shaquille so many times it became part of him. She said, "When someone in front of you is struggling and you have the means to help, you don't look away. You don't wait for someone else. You just help. That's not charity. That's being human." Shaq's stepfather, Sergeant Philip Harrison of the United States Army, added the other half. He told Shaq, "Big man, the measure of a person is not what they do when everyone is watching. It is what they do when no one will ever know." Shaq carried both of those things his entire life, into arenas, boardrooms, television studios, and into a corner store in Baton Rouge on a Tuesday in March. Now, here is the part nobody knew. 3 days after that Tuesday afternoon, a man named Gerald Arsenault posted a video on Facebook. Gerald was 44 years old, a high school football coach in Baton Rouge. He visited his grandmother Delphine every Sunday without fail. Had done it for 22 years. The video was just Gerald sitting in his car in Delphine's driveway, phone propped on the dashboard. His voice cracked twice in the first 30 seconds. He said this, "My grandmother came home Tuesday with her groceries and told me a giant man at the corner store paid for everything when her card didn't work. She didn't know who he was. But I think I do. Because there's only one person I've ever seen in real life that tall, and it was outside the Staples Center after a Lakers playoff game in 2001. And that man changed my life." Gerald paused. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I was 19 years old. I had driven to Los Angeles from Baton Rouge in a car that barely made it. I had a scholarship offer to play football at a small school in Texas, but I didn't have the $800 I needed for the deposit by Monday, or I was going to lose the spot. 3 weeks I had been trying to get it. I had nothing. I was standing in that parking lot after the game with no idea what I was going to do, and this enormous man walked past me." He stopped. He looked at me. I don't know why he stopped. There were hundreds of people around. But he stopped. He said, "Are you okay?" And I told him the truth. The scholarship, the deadline, the $800, all of it. He reached into his jacket. He pulled out an envelope. He said, "Go play. Don't look back. Make someone proud." And he walked away. Inside the envelope was $2,000 in cash. I used $800 for the deposit. I used the rest to get home. I played 4 years of college football. I became a coach. I have spent the last 18 years teaching young men how to be better than I was." Gerald looked directly at the camera. The man who stopped in that parking lot in 2001 was Shaquille O'Neal. I never forgot his face. I just didn't know how to find him to say thank you. And now he walked into my grandmother's corner store 22 years later and paid for her groceries without knowing who she was. She didn't know. He didn't know. But I know. The video was shared 4,000 times by midnight. By the next morning, it had reached 180,000 views. By that evening, 2.3 million people had watched Gerald Arsenault sit in his grandmother's driveway and cry. Because that was the thing. Shaq did not know. He had no idea that the woman with the lavender blouse and the pearl buttons and the can of kidney beans was the grandmother of the 19-year-old boy he had stopped for in a parking lot in 2001. Shaq had done it so many times. So many envelopes. So many parking lots. So many people who needed $800 or just someone to stop and ask if they were okay. He never kept track. He never followed up. He never asked for names. His stepfather had told him not to. Philip Harrison had said, "If you help someone and then wait to see what comes back to you, you didn't really help them. You made an investment." Those are two different things. When a reporter reached Shaq through his publicist 2 days after the video went viral, Shaq's response was 4 sentences. He said, "I don't remember 2001. I'm glad he made it. Tell his grandmother I hope her card works better next time. Tell her the eggs were on me, that was it." No press conference. No social media post. Just a man who paid $41 for an old woman's groceries on a Tuesday and drove away. But the story did not stop there. Gerald Arsenault was not the only one who came forward. Within 1 week, 17 other people posted their own videos, their own letters, their own stories. A woman in Orlando who had been helped at a gas station in 2004. A father in Memphis whose son's college application fee had been covered by a stranger at a FedEx counter in 2009. A nurse in Houston given cash by a man who overheard her crying about her rent in a hospital parking lot after a double shift in 2015. None of them had names. None of them had proof. But the descriptions were always the same. Very tall, very quiet, gray hoodie or plain clothes, paid and walked away before anyone could say thank you. A journalist at The Advocate in Baton Rouge spent 2 weeks making calls. She published one line at the end of her article that traveled further than anything else she ever wrote. She wrote, "There is a category of kindness that requires invisibility to work." He seems to have found it. Gerald drove to Delphine's house that Sunday, the same as always. He brought her flowers. Yellow ones because she liked yellow. He showed her the video on his phone. He showed her 2.3 million views. Delphine watched. She did not speak for a long time. Then she said, "He has his mother's eyes." Gerald looked at her. "What?" "That young man in the store," she said. Big as he was, he had his mother's eyes. You could tell someone good raised him. She picked up her coffee cup. She took a slow sip. "You thank him for me," she said. "Not for the groceries. For stopping. That's the part people forget to do anymore. They forget to just stop." Outside Delphine's window, afternoon light came through the thin curtains and fell across the kitchen table in long yellow lines. A dog barked somewhere down the block. A car passed slowly with its radio on. Life continued the way it always does. Small, ordinary, full of things that matter more than they look. On a shelf above Delphine's stove, next to a small wooden cross and a photograph of her late husband, there was now a new photograph. Gerald had printed it and framed it for her. It was a screenshot from a grainy security camera. You could barely make out the shape of it. But if you looked closely, you could see a very large man in a gray hoodie handing a card across a checkout counter. And you could see a small woman in a lavender blouse with her hand pressed to her chest. She had put it up there herself, right next to the cross, because somewhere in this country, right now, there is a checkout line, and someone's card is not going through, and they are counting their cash with quiet hands, and most people are looking at their watches, but some people stop. Some people put down their basket and walk over and say, "Leave it." Not for the cameras, not for the comments, not for the views, just because someone good raised them, and that is the story of a man who paid for a stranger's groceries, and never knew why it mattered as much as it did. Before you go, drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. London, Lagos, Houston, Manila, wherever you are, we want to know. We read every single one, and we love knowing how far these stories travel. If this moved you even a little, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps this story reach someone out there who really needs to hear it today. Share this video with one person, just one, because kindness travels the same way it always has. One person, one moment, one quiet Tuesday afternoon at a time. And if you are new here, welcome. Subscribe and tap that bell. We bring you stories like this every single week. Real moments that remind you the world still has good people in it. Now click on the video appearing on your screen right now, because the next story is one you are absolutely not going to see coming. We will see you there.